Well, I guess the first thing we'd like to say is that 3 years ago today, Tony was arrested. And from the very moment that I met him and Nicole met him and our team did, we were 100% convinced of his innocence. And that has never wavered. And the same could be said for his wife, his kids, his family, all of whom are here. And we're just very grateful that the jury saw what we saw. A kind, loving man that is 100% innocent. And our team, for 3 years, have moved heaven and earth to make this happen and to show the world that what kind of man Tony Haase really is. And so we're very grateful, and so we'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if Nicole has anything she'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a horrific story. And I mirror everything that Attorney Birdsall said about Tony and, you know, how we believed in him from day one. But I think there's still two families who have unanswered questions. And I don't want it to seem like we're here forgetting about that, because we don't. Because what happened to Tim and Tanna was terrible. It was evil, just like we said in our presentation of our case. And who knows if one day the truth will come out, but I hope it does for those families. But it was never Tony. And so the verdict today really truly means a lot for us and for everyone in Tony's life.
So Tony is going to be released. Do you have an expected time, date for that to happen?
Within the hour.
Okay. Would it be possible if we'd be able to speak to him afterwards?
I'm very confident he does not want to speak to anybody.
Yeah.
Completely understandable. Thank you.
What do you think your most powerful argument was at trial?
Probably the vicious nature of this crime, juxtaposing that to Tony's actual character, and that there's just no way that this man could have done such an evil thing, I think.
When it was taking the jury so long to deliberate, was there any sort of, you guys were thinking maybe, why are they taking so long? Was there any sort of nervousness behind it?
No, I mean, it was a 4-week trial, right? There were also things that we anticipated that would take them a long time to kind of deliberate on and dissect, mainly the DNA. If you just listen to closings, you could see that it's picking apart a million different things. We don't just have one test, we have all these tests all saying different things. And it took us months to have years to have a grasp around the science in this particular case. So to expect a jury to, with the snap of a fingers, understand that and be able to move quickly, I don't think we ever thought that this was going to be a quick deliberation. But it also kind of was a quick deliberation, because the first day they were only out for like 3 hours. The second day they left at 2. Friday we were all here. They watched the interrogation video. And then they only deliberated for 2 hours. So all in all, it actually, I think, time deliberating went quicker than I would have thought.
And I have to say that this is probably the most attentive jury I've ever seen, ever. And just during the trial, and then when they came out to watch the interrogation video, it was really remarkable.
Like the amount of notes they were taking. Yeah.
They wanted to be sure they were making their informed decision, like you mentioned in closing arguments. This was Tony's life.
Right.
This is the life in your hands, and do the right thing.
Yeah.
You guys sound like put a lot of doubt into the jury's head, for sure, about what actually happened that night in March of 1992.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of trying this case?
No comment?
3 years of preparation. Just sheer preparation. It was the volume of documents in a 30-year investigation, the science, all of that. It was was very challenging. But we were up to the task with our team, our incredible law clerk, Abby Hagar, our incredible paralegal, Jasmine Muniz, and of course my brilliant partner, Nicole Muller. You know, with people like that, it's a challenge, but we were up to it.
And our assistant, Mia Tamburello,
Oh,
who
yes.
isn't here with us for this trial, but she was paramount in organizing the discovery in a way that we could go through it. I mean, when the witnesses said that there were thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of discovery, I think the final bait stamp was somewhere up near 19,000.
You know,
So it was, and that's just the documents. That doesn't include all of, the other transcripts, the videos, the other type of discovery. So, and, we've been, like the last month we've been living out here, every day. We were right on a lake and couldn't even enjoy it because it was work 24/7. So it's definitely a challenge to.
but it was all
to
for
get
somebody
through.
that we believed in completely, and that was never wavering.
Did Tony ever lose hope throughout this trial?
No.
No.
Tony was exactly like you all saw him in the interrogation and you saw him at trial. He is just as steady as they come and unflappable. And, he knew of his innocence and he knew that we believed in him. And so, he's exactly like every single witness described him. Calm, steady, just like he's a rock.
Has he shared with you what's next?
I have no idea.
Probably hugging his family.
Yeah, I think that would be the first thing, and I believe there's a wedding coming up next month, and so.
Anything else for anybody?
I had something.
It's okay.
In the meantime, is there anything else that you would like to add that we didn't mention?
I'm good.
Yeah, no.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything that
Would the
you-
family like to say anything?
Yes.
That's up to you guys. I think probably not, but no. All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys. And thanks for your reporting. I'm happy you guys got the other side of the story during this trial.
First of all, walk me through kind of what the experience was like for you sitting on a jury. I don't know how long you've lived in Waupaca County, if you were even familiar with the case at all to begin with from 30 plus years ago.
Just kind of knew the names. That's about all. The more I didn't know really much about it at all. I just knew the names of the people, and it's like, well, I figured if I don't know much, it's probably a good chance I could be in the jury, and ended up that way. So then you're just going off the facts presented.
Okay, so I mean, it was a long trial, 4 weeks. I mean, you guys were there long days. What was that like?
It gets to be old after a while. I mean, it's a privilege to do it. You're doing your civic duty. I didn't mind doing it, but it gets along.
Yeah, and then so 4 weeks. They send the case to the jury. What happens when you get in that jury room the first time after the case has all been presented to you guys?
Oh, you just take a vote to see where people are at, and then you start discussing it. We got a whiteboard in there. You pros, cons. So it's just that's a nice civil, discussion back and forth. What this person is thinking, that person is thinking. That was a good process. It took us 4 days, but just a lot of back and forth. So I thought that part went really well.
And you said what was that initial vote? What was that initial vote?
Let's say 6 and 6.
So 6 for guilty, 6 for not guilty. So I guess what happened over the course of those 4 days that you were able to, I guess, can I ask what side were you on initially?
Initially, actually, like guilty, actually.
Okay.
And you just back and forth. People explain their reasoning. You explain your reasoning, and it's like, what makes more sense, what makes less sense, just that kind of thing.
So why did you initially think he was guilty, and what was it that made you switch your vote?
Yeah, I believe in, when I first looked at it, I thought the DNA was really positive, and it's like, once we delved into it a little more, and had some people there that knew a little more about it. It helped point out to me, it's like, okay, that would kind of sway me the other way. And then there's the handprints. There was, it wasn't a 100% match on it. There was some doubt there for me on the handprints, but I started out guilty, but guilty with, with the probably, I can be swayed, through the evidence, just looking at different this, that.
And you said that, some people knew more about the DNA. I guess, you're supposed to base the decision kind of on the facts that were presented. Do you feel like when you say people knew more about the DNA, like better understanding of the science of it, or what?
Yep, there's some people with us that, understood it a little more. And that helped explain the numbers, the analytical parts of it. That helped explain it's not 100%, so that once we found, once we agreed it's like, not 100% match, it's like that made it a little easier to look at it that way, because it's like, early on being told it's 100% match, and later on you was like, well, okay, it's not. And it's like, all right, that put some doubt in there. So I was going with, like I say, going with the facts presented to us.
And what about the confession? I mean, you guys rewatched his confession, correct?
Yep.
And what were the thoughts on that?
I mean, that came back, and some people said their opinion. They watched the second time, their opinion changed from the first time. And other people, we had all different results from that, watching that. It's like, but it was very good to watch it the second time, because we all, really paid attention, and like I say, just really paid attention to it, and like I say, we just talked about it and discussed it, and as a group, we came up with a group decision.
That it was like a false confession, or
I guess I go more so it was, I don't know if I say coerced, but just after 5 hours of, it's just like kind of telling them what to say, and then it's like eventually kind of said what they wanted to say, and then that's, so it's, it's just your, what you feel, what I feel, what the other people feel,
yeah.
Like I say, it's just based on the facts presented to us. That's how we're supposed to decide the case, and this is how we how it turned out.
And let me ask you, I know at one point you guys sent a note to the jury saying that there was kind of one holdout person, and I guess, was that one holdout thought he was guilty or thought he was not guilty and they weren't going to be swayed?
Not really. It was more just when the person wanted clarification, just a little more on, the process, because, we weren't at one person right off the bat, so it's more of a clarification for one person just needed some clarity for their thinking. So that's about all that really amounted to. We weren't at, one person right off the bat, so that wasn't really never a big issue. Probably sounded more like it did to you guys, but to us, not really. It was just more of a clarification thing. Okay.
And then, I guess, so, obviously, I mean, it took the 4 days for you to all kind of agree, and that decision sort of came Monday morning after not that long. How close were you, I guess, to a verdict on Friday that you came in on Monday and fairly quickly Monday morning were able to reach a final decision?
I'd say we were like 9-3. So but everybody wanted to take the weekend and think about it. And it's like, so we're not going to decide it on Friday night. We're going to come back on Monday. Everybody. And we had more questions between the group, and so we were just having a good discussion. Like I say, the weekend was good for all of us. You get a chance to think about questions you're going to ask each other on Monday. So that helps a lot to wait over the weekend.
How quickly was your vote swayed?
Actually, my second vote, I actually switched.
Okay, and did you vote like once a day? How often did you guys vote?
It's roughly 2 or 3 times a day. You talk for a while, and then you'd be like, okay, let's do a vote. Let's see where we're at. So
I mean, do you think that the uncle is the one that was responsible for the deaths?
I will. That I'm not going to say yes or no. That I'm not going to answer.
I mean, I guess did that evidence really? I mean, did that put reasonable doubt in a lot of people's minds that there was potentially a second or another suspect?
I'll say maybe a little bit, but that wasn't huge on. It was more the facts of, like that part I want to say not really didn't sway much. It was more the facts on the DNA, facts on the, the handprints, fingerprints that swayed us. It wasn't like Jeff Teal, those guys. That stuff didn't really. It came up, but not. It wasn't totally what was it. Tilted the scales.
Gotcha. I mean, I guess, are you, I don't want to say glad you sat on the jury, but I mean, experience obviously that you'll probably never forget.
You're right. Yes, I was very happy to do it. Like I say, I called my civic duties, and it was a privilege to do it. But it got to be long. I was pretty happy yesterday when I got done.
I mean, does your heart ache at all for the victims' families and the prosecutors who thought that they had the guy who committed these heinous crimes?
I like to think we just did our job, the best of our ability with the facts we were presented, and I'm going to try not to, go much farther than that.
Well, I mean, my co-counsel and I were both very disappointed in the verdict. Obviously, we worked tirelessly for months to prepare for this trial. We had been working for several years towards it, and there were investigators who had spent their entire careers working on this case. And so the disappointment was extreme. I think the court's rulings suppressing us from presenting any of the DNA evidence that would have demonstrated the exclusion of the third-party suspects that were presented by the defense put us in that position where the jury didn't have the opportunity to hear everything. That's what I believe created the doubt. I disagree, but I wasn't part of the jury, so I'm not going to criticize them. That's our system of justice provides for juries to determine guilt, and that's the decision they made based on the evidence that was presented to them, which I hope the general public realizes wasn't everything. What the jury gets is a curated list of the evidence that's available. And that curation is done in pre-trial hearings. And in this case, there was evidence that the judge decided was not going to be permitted to be presented to the jury for a variety of reasons. And we have to respect those judicial determinations, whether we agree with them or not. And sometimes we don't. Our choices are to appeal or move forward without that evidence. In this case, we decided, given the age of the case and the risk that people who were integral to us establishing the case might die or be in some other way medically incapacitated and unable to testify if the trial were pushed off, made that decision a very difficult one. There are choices that are made. And we live with the consequences of those choices. And at the end of the day, what the jury decides is what our Constitution determines justice to be, whether I agree with it personally or not. That's the way our system works, and I accept that jury decision. Obviously, I haven't spoken to any jurors, so I don't know. But assuming that what you shared with me is the feeling of all the jurors, then it's possible that if they had been permitted to hear that Jeff Teal, who was the maternal uncle of the defendant, had been excluded twice by DNA analysis, once in 1996 and once more recently after his body was exhumed for further testing. That might have resolved some of the doubt for them, but I don't know that they would have made a different decision, and I don't think that's something that we can know. Don't go anywhere. We move on, and I hope the best for the families of the victims in this case, that they're able to move on with their lives and find some peace. And Tony Haase has been determined to be not guilty by a jury of his peers, and I respect that determination. I will say that I have never in my life encountered a group of people who were more generous of spirit than the families of the victims in this case. The outpouring of support for myself and the entire prosecutorial team, despite us not getting a conviction in this case, was extraordinary and is something that I will hold close. I think they were disappointed, but they have been fighting for their loved ones for more than 3 decades. And I think they're ready to move on. I don't know. I think time will tell, but I do think that Tony Haase spent 30 years among us and didn't commit another crime. I am certainly hopeful that he will continue to lead a peaceful and law-abiding life. And I'm not going to live in fear of him. And I feel confident having seen all the testing. But nonetheless, he's been determined to be not guilty. And again, I respect that decision. He's not convicted of anything. It should not be held against him.